It's okay. It's okay. Take a deep breath. You had a surgery. You've been under anesthesia, but you're okay. We're gonna get you out of here.
What's going on?
Well, you had an event, and we had to operate, but you're gonna be okay.
Why is my rear end killing me?
We had to perform an emergency intracranial rectal removal, and the worst part is, this has been happening a lot. This is the second time you've been in the hospital because your head has been up your ass. I need to ask you something. Are you a Democrat?
Yeah,
Okay. That
I was in the Union about 20 years ago.
Okay. Oh, slow down. We don't want that head to go back up there. All right? This happens a lot with liberals. Your beliefs and the way you vote affects the way your head relates with your butthole. And it'll just go right up there and it'll block reality.
But we gotta be loyal and remember.
Whoa. Shush. It'll happen right as I'm sitting here. It's not pleasant to watch. So I want you to take a look at this. That is the Constitution. Now look at it, read it, and that's going to affect the way you see the world. Welcome aboard. I'm also going to write you a prescription for a couple of old Ronald Reagan speeches.
Oh, welcome to the Ryan Max Show. Wow. So intracranial rectal removal. That is what takes place, liberals, when your heads are so far up your butt, you have no idea how to get it out. I thought I'd play that to open the show. It is the Ryan Max Show on Cities 92.9. 309-451-9299 is the phone number. Text in. Today is a loaded show. Got a lot of different things to cover today. It was one of those shows I couldn't just come up with a singular topic. So let's just go right into it. That was a funny little play to open the show, because liberals really do have their heads so far up their butts, it's very hard to see where they begin. But we're going to pull it out today. We're going to help you guys out today, give you some thoughts. All right, so there was a Super Bowl this week. The Chiefs beat the Eagles 38-35. It was a compelling game. It was good to see a comeback by the Chiefs. Great game by the Eagles. I thought Jalen Hurts played a really good game. The halftime show, really uninspiring. It wasn't the greatest performance. I have seen some really good ones over the years, but lately it seems like all they want to do is push even further woke agendas with their Super Bowl, and the performances have sucked as a result. But Rihanna, her songs I've listened to, they're not great. I don't listen to a lot of her music, but she apparently was pregnant. And dancing around, air humping the stage, and all the little backup dancers with white jackets reminded you of either a sperm commercial going to the egg, or the Oompa Loompas, or something out of Star Wars. It was a very dark theme. The performance itself was boring. I thought the staging of it was kind of, just kind of not really inspiring at all. I feel like it was just kind of blah. But there's an overall theme. I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat here for a minute for those of you who don't care. Don't attack me. From the halftime performance, draped in red, and the Grammy performance that Sam Smith put on with this Satan attire, from the Hollywoodized movement, and this grandioso societal take of pushing Satanism and secularism and getting God out of things and persecuting people who pray, except they didn't do it during the Bengals and Bills game, which is amazing. Are we under a culture war, or are we under a spiritual war? Well, we can debate those two things. I feel like we're under a spiritual war, to be honest, but also a cultural war, because you've seen both sides of the aisle come under attack for their different beliefs. But the cultural war has been here for quite some time, several years, I think. But there's been a shift, and there's been an attack on this religious freedom movement. We have a constitution. We have rights in this country. And one of them, yes, is freedom of speech. You can freedom to espouse whatever thing comes to your mind. But you don't have a right to censor, to silence, to cut out the opposing side. And that's what's happening with this woke ideology and this Satanist worship that's come unglued lately. It seems like all they want to do is push Satanism and remove everything that Christians stand for. So the cultural war, you have CRT in the classrooms, you have a takeover of the military, you have diversity, equity, inclusion hires and policy. You have cake bakers, Christian cake bakers under attack and being forced to bake cakes even though they don't believe in some of the things that they're being asked to do. Look, if you have a problem with somebody baking a cake and they don't want to bake you a cake, go somewhere else. They don't have to bake you a cake just because you're gay or you're trans. If it were me, I wouldn't want to ask somebody to make me something if it went against their beliefs, just to force them to do it just because say I win. That's not how this works. But this LGBTQ anti-God agenda is being pushed right down our throats. The Black Lives Matter, the Marxist movements, the anti-religious crowd is loud, but they're only the small minority of the country. The spiritual war that is taking place is very, very much alive. You've seen the attacks on pro-life, the attacks on the abortion movement. You've seen teachers, you've seen employers come down hard on people who have a strong faith. And they're getting fired, or they're getting silenced, they're getting censored, they're getting removed from society, from participating in society simply because of their religious belief. They're being forced to accept these different ideologies that don't line up with their beliefs. For me, I wouldn't want to be a part of a society that pushes these things down my throat either. But in all fairness, both sides should have an equal say in how they live, right? So I have an article, and if you want to say that there's no one attacking anyone, it's just a myth, it's just made up, you're not really being pushed out of your job for being a Christian, and all that. And it actually, that is not the case at all, because there was a Christian teacher in California, of all places, who was fired because of her belief. And not that Christian teachers are pushing their beliefs anyway, but because they have a question of how they go about teaching, or if they're being forced to teach a certain way, they're being silenced. So I want to bring you this article here. Again, this is the Ryan Mack Show. This is Ryan Mack on Cities 92.9. Feel free to text in today. We've got a lot going on. I got a lot to get through. So it's going to be a fast and fiery 45 minutes. But I wanted to bring out the highlights from the Super Bowl halftime and this cultural and spiritual war we are undertaking as a country currently. So there's a Christian teacher that lost her job. A California teacher, this is according to Fox News article that I found, refuses to comply with the California district's gender policies, citing Christian beliefs, and she's blowing the whistle on expectations that she was felt as a teacher not only hide students' gender transition from parents, but also to keep them in the dark about through lying. So she's being told to lie to parents if they don't know about the gender transitions. Quote, I knew immediately, like in my gut, in my heart, in my soul, that there was a decision I had to make because, these two things were really totally butting heads. She worked at the Jurupa Unified School District. Essentially had to pick one. Am I going to obey the district and the directive that are not lining up with my own beliefs, convictions, and faith? Or am I going to stay true to my choose my faith, choose to be obedient to the way the Lord has called me to live? And so it was crazy to be in a position where I realized I couldn't be a Christian and a teacher. That's scary. In a notice under Superintendent Trenton Hansen's letterhead reviewed by Fox News Digital, the district said they couldn't accommodate her Christian beliefs, which prohibited her from withholding information on gender transitions from kids' parents. Quote, consequentially, wow, that was a tough one, the district will release you from your employment effective at the end of the day, January 31st. Based on your religious beliefs, you cannot be dishonest with parents. If asked about a student's gender identity by a parent, you cannot refer the parent to a counselor, defer the inquiry, or suggest they speak with a student, or otherwise deflect the parent's inquiry. The letter is signed by Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. The district cannot accommodate your religious beliefs that prohibit you from maintaining a student's gender identity and refraining from disclosing a student's gender identity from his, her, their parent, guardian, whatever. So she's being fired because she doesn't feel like lying to the parents who ask about things that are happening in their class, especially when it comes to gender policies. What kind of school is that? What kind of culture, what kind of society does this? Where we're punishing and firing teachers of a belief that question your own rules. I get it that you are hired to do said rule, follow the rules and follow the laws and follow the job code, but that goes against her own conviction as a faith person. And she chose her faith, and that's what Jesus calls us to do. Choose him over the world. So I thought I'd start off with the first segment on the spiritual and cultural wars. Removing God from society, embracing secularism. This is what the left's goal is, and we should be ready to fight back. There's a ton of ways to fight back. Another example is the revival that's taking place at Asbury College in Kentucky. If you haven't seen it, I advise you to go see it. It is really cool to see. A couple weeks straight now, students are just hauling in and joining in a prayer and singing and just being together in God. That's awesome. Next on the chopping block, we've got some health updates of the president, a senator. Don Lemon doesn't think Nikki Haley is fit for a presidential run. Stay tuned. This is the Ryan Mack Show on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Up next, we got all kinds of good stuff, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the Ryan Mack Show on Cities 92.9. 309-451-9299 is the text line. Text in today. We've got a lot to get to, a lot to going on. This next segment, I've got a lot of hits to take. First off, a health check. Biden had his physical this week. Doctor says he's A-OK. He's a healthy, vigorous 80-year-old male. Except that also isn't true because Mark Siegel, doctor and contributor to Fox News, spoke earlier this week that he's got a very fragile, very stiff gait, notably probably arthritis, some condition with his feet causing problems. But don't worry, he is perfectly healthy. He won't fall downstairs anytime soon. Physically, he is fit as anything, and he is a vigorous 80-year-old man. But they didn't really check his mental acuity. This guy's fastball left him, about probably 20 years ago. Have you seen some of the things he does? I've watched him fall downstairs. I've watched him do an interview in which one of his eyes was closed. From gaffe to gaffe, from mental mistake to mental mistake, this guy clearly has lost his marbles, not to mention everything in between. Everything comes out of his mouth. He stumbles, he staggers, he trips over his words. He can't even finish the teleprompter cleanly without messing up words on the screen. He can't read it cleanly. He messes up things that are actually given to him. So if they really wanted to see a check of his mental state and physical state, they should do both. Check a cognitive test. Now, Nikki Haley was called out this week because she thinks that over 75, if you're running for president or in the office, you should have a cognitive test done all the time. You should have a yearly mental checkup because there's a lot of things that can happen as you age. But nonetheless, that doesn't stop Don Lemon from using Google because he doesn't know what women are and what a woman is, nor does he know what their prime is. But he doesn't go to Google and just say, hey, what's prime presidential age for women? He just Googles prime for women, and he trips over it, and he's got two women as his co-hosts, and they absolutely light him up for it. So here is Don Lemon insinuating that Nikki Haley, at age 51, is past her prime.
About age I think it's the wrong road to go down. She says people, politicians or something are not in their prime. Nikki Haley isn't in her prime. Sorry. When a woman is considered to be in her prime in her 20s and 30s and maybe 40s.
What are you talking? Wait.
That's not according to me.
Prime for what?
It depends. I mean, it's just like prime. If you look it up, if you Google when is a woman in her prime, it'll say 20s, 30s, and 40s. I don't necessarily.
40s. So I got another.
I'm not saying
decade.
I agree with that. So I think she has to be careful about saying that politicians aren't in their prime.
You need to qualify. Are you talking about prime for like childbearing, or are you talking about prime for being president?
What the facts are. Google it. Everybody at home. When is a woman in her prime? It says 20s, 30s, and 40s. And I'm just saying Nikki Haley should be careful about saying that politicians are not in their prime, and they need to be in their prime when they serve, because she wouldn't be in her prime according to Google or whatever it is.
So Nikki Haley is not in her prime according to Google and Don Lemon. I'm sorry, but that is probably the dumbest thing he has ever said, and he has said a lot of dumb things. That takes the cake. Nikki Haley, well, I don't agree with everything she stands for, but I certainly believe that she's in her prime as far as presidents are concerned, because our last couple of presidents have been well above 70. So she's not exactly wrong into questioning the mental acuity of anyone older than 75. But Don comes out, clearly states that she's past her prime, even though he doesn't know what prime is for women. That's prime childbearing years, 20, 30s, and before 40. But certainly, she's in her prime for presidential candidacy when she's only 51. So there's that. In other news, as I was preparing for the show, news broke again that your favorite senator from this great state of Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, has been hospitalized again. But this time it wasn't stroke-related at all. Or was it? Well, he was hospitalized again with clinical depression, so he's going to be treated for that. In other words, his stroke is still affecting him, and he shouldn't be anywhere near the Senate. But you great people of Pennsylvania thought that he was so fit mentally and physically, by my calculations. He also is the best dressed individual. So not only is he great physical shape, he's the best dressed individual in Pennsylvania and all the world. He also is mentally great. He thinks the Eagles are better than the Eagles, and he is showing it this week. So far, since becoming the senator of Pennsylvania, he's been hospitalized twice in less than a month, less than a week. So there's your fine senator representing 7 some odd million people in Pennsylvania. Once again, I told you so, and many of talking points has been surrounded about his health. So is his wife going to eventually take over? She's kookier than he is. Well, let's come to find out. We don't know. All right. Moving on. In Illinois, later this week, we got some issues. J.B. Pritzker is kind of like, well, a lot like Gavin Newsom, except with more of him and shorter. He comes out like Gavin Newsom, he scaves off recall. Gavin Newsom went scorched earth and just tore California a new one for barely winning the recall. J.B. Pritzker wins re-election and doubles down on all his policies that are going to continue to ruin this state of Illinois for years to come. But he didn't stop there. He is doubling down on his education promise, free universal preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds, and free college for all working adults. Now, how's he going to pay for it, he asks? Why would you ask that? He's got billions of dollars. He's got a surplus. Well, except that surplus money was money that was given to him by the federal government, and it was at the expense of taxpayers. So yes, he has a surplus currently, but our backlog of bills, the pension debt is one of them. The debt overall in the state of Illinois has been growing every year. And now he wants to spend even further into oblivion with this latest Smart Start program initiative. So he's going to spend Illinois into further debt. So this is from Wire Points. Not beyond the budget, Pritzker can't afford these spending programs. Free college and free preschool doesn't exist without some kind of cost growth, right? So beyond the budget, it's going to cost well over $400 million to start this program, and it's going to be north of that for years to come. That's how it works. You raise taxes all you want, but you still can't pay for it. But beyond the budget, according to Wire Points, not a single student can do math at grade levels in 53 Illinois schools, and for reading, it's 30. So state data that tracks reading and math scores for each Illinois school reveals that two frightening facts about this school district up in Little Village in Chicago. Not a single one of its 88 kids at the school can read at grade level. The same for math. 0 kids are proficient. Spry is one of the 30 schools in Illinois that where not a single student can read at grade level. 22 of those schools are part of the Chicago Public Schools, and the other 8 are outside of Chicago. So we've got a governor here that wants to throw more money of education, but can't afford it. And also his schools are failing across the board, most notably Chicago. Chicago has one of the highest graduation rates, but also the lowest scores, which is odd. So there's that. He's going to continue to spend this in oblivion, and it's just great. Our 3- and 4-year-olds will be indoctrinated even earlier with the woke agenda he has planned, and you won't be able to pay for it. They'll be paying for it well into their 70s for their preschool. All right. Moving on to other news. The Michigan State had a shooting, a mass shooting. It clarifies more than one person was shot. But the left again cried for assault weapons ban. Now, I didn't go all in on this story. I just wanted to bring up this tidbit of it. The fact that the left, every time there's a shooting of any kind, they immediately run to grab your guns, grab your guns, grab your guns. You don't need them. Gun control saves lives. We have less guns. We'll have less shootings. That's not exactly true, because more often than not, when you remove guns from gun law abiding people, it just opens up more criminal activity because there's gun-free zones. We've already seen that. When places are gun-free zones, there are more shootings and more deaths. But I thought it was interesting to bring up the fact that the Michigan State shooter legally purchased 2 handguns, none of which are classified as assault weapons, but nonetheless, the left will scream assault weapon ban now, immediately. This will end the lives of, the killing of lives, which it doesn't, because handguns just killed students on campus. So Whitmer is out of her mind. She's calling for it. Every CNN anchor, every MSNBC, every idiot on Twitter is calling for mass gun recall and buyback program and whatever. That's all they want to do. Every time somebody gets shot and killed, take your guns. That's not the answer to it. I do think we need gun reform, but how about following the laws that you have on the books? Red flag laws are not being followed. They're not. You have gun laws on the books that are not being followed. So if they're not being followed, how is that going to stop? Start with the ones you have on the books first, and then begin to talk about other ways in which you can solve the violence, like mental health. People with mental health issues who didn't pass the red flag laws that you didn't use shouldn't be able to buy these guns. And if they were legally able to purchase them, we have no other flags in the background, then you have to look at other ways and means of removing said individuals. But locking up criminals and doing a better job of mental health is the way to go. I'm sorry, but it's not the guns. My guns have not killed anybody since I bought them. It's a fact. Guns by themselves don't kill people. It's ridiculous to say otherwise. The mentally ill and dangerous people who should not have access to weapons are the ones behind the weapon. My guns haven't shot anybody. So, point blank. All right, moving on. So part of the Trump grand jury, the election fraud scandal phone call that was done in Georgia during the 2020 election, there's a grand jury everywhere you go looking into Trump, and they released parts of it. Now, there's a lot going on in this Fulton County. It's a very liberal county. The judge is kind of a kook. But there's parts of testimony being released today. There's also suggestions that the jury said that there's witnesses that may have perjured themselves. So I want to get into that next and more. Stick around. This is the Ryan Max Show, and you are listening on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. We'll be right back.
Is the best communicator that we have in the White House.
The best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway, from Charlotte, another line going from in Florida down to Tampa of Putin's kleptocracy. Yeah. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him. The idea that Los Angeles and what am I doing here? For two reasons. One, because we haven't been able to communicate it in a way that is, let me say another way. With the nature, not a solid meeting with they make a very good point. Here's the deal. Here's what drives the driver in the states that are affected. Here's what you can do, the drivers.
What? Welcome back to the Ryan Mack Show on Cities 92.9, the news and talk in Bloomington Normal. What you just heard was a smashing of the best communicator of all time, Joe Biden. So there's that. 309-451-9299 is the number. Please text in and be a part of the show today. We've been talking about all kinds of newsy type stuff. Joe Biden is not a great communicator, but Karine Jean-Pierre thinks he is. And compared to her, maybe he is. But what you heard there was a good greatest hits of things that he is just absolutely great at. All right, so we were talking about Trump's grand jury ordeal in Georgia. On the phone call, again, they tried to get him in trouble with, and a special grand jury in Fulton County, Georgia, has released portions of the report detailing findings from an investigation into whether former President Trump and his allies interfered. Again, if you have an opinion on the election interference, or it was stolen or rigged or whatever, that's an opinion you're entitled to have. So the fact that he can be held liable criminally for, making a statement, say, hey, check into this or check into that, it's just no different than the Ukrainian phone call. Hey, we've already got your aid money to you, unlike Joe Biden when he promised it and then was going to threaten to walk out. The money was already in the bag. He just said, hey, you need to fix this corruption. We can help you going forward. But that was a phone call, and that was an impeachment. So anyway, the long-awaited important sections of the Georgia report, which do not even mention Trump's name, have nothing to do with President Trump. This is according to his campaign. The president participated in 2 phone calls regarding election integrity. And it's his duty constitutionally to make sure elections are safe, secure, and full of integrity. But prosecutors and several media organizations had pushed to release the grand jury's full report, but Superior Court judge has refused, citing very limited due process given to Trump's allies. On Monday, the judge said that he would release the introduction and conclusion along with sections of grand jurors expressed concern that some witnesses may have lied under oath. Any recommendations on who should or should not be prosecuted will remain secret for now due to protect their due process rights. So at least he's concerned about due process in this case. The report comes as Trump is actively campaigning to return to the White House in 2024. So it just seems like they're trying to find in any way, shape, or form, and we've seen it from the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years, at least when he was running for office, before and in his presidency, that they're going to continue to come after him until they can prevent him from running or becoming president or being in office again. And time again, we see that it's just not going to happen. There's nothing they can do short-sighted of him actually committing a crime, which in and of itself doesn't prevent you from holding office. Joe Biden has numerous crimes in his background involving financial interests in other countries, yet he is able to be in the Oval Office right now. So if anybody has been convicted or needs to be convicted and prosecuted, it's Joe Biden and his son. All right. moving on. We've got, the Super Bowl. We've got all this halftime stuff. We got the balloons flying all over the country. Are they spy balloons? Are they alien spacecraft? We have no idea, right? The first balloon went all the way across the continent and then finally shot down over Myrtle Beach. How it even was allowed to get there was beyond me. If they try to say that Trump had balloons fly over and they didn't say anything, if one, he didn't know, then that's a national security concern if you're not letting the president know that there was balloons entering the atmosphere of the air. And two, if he did know, that would be a problem. I would call him out. The fact that nobody in his Defense Department has said that at all remains that they're again deflecting, and the fact that they've had multiple objects fly into the United States airspace and shooting them down after reacting wrongfully the first one speaks a little weird. Now, they come out this week and say that, well, we are not cutting off the fact that it might be aliens, even though Karine Jean-Pierre said it was. She was not going to allow aliens and ET to become a thing, despite the Pentagon's insistence over the years that we actually have UFOs zapping around our atmosphere all the time. So Biden finally comes out this week and says that, we don't know what they are. And then on the other side of his mouth, he says, we do know that they're just probably weather balloons or, private companies. Funny, private companies haven't come forward and said, hey, man, you shot down my balloon. So nothing of that has happened. So where is he getting this information? First hand, he says he doesn't know. The next minute, he says, well, they're not surveillance. Not part of the Chinese one. But there was one, however, they did shoot down. It took a $400,000 missile to shoot down a $12 balloon. It was a hobby club in Illinois. They had bottle cap balloons, and they were shot out of the sky just over Canada. So, fancy that. In other crazy tidbits, we've got train derailments. I know Tucker did a segment on this, or show us the other night, about there's been hundreds of cases in the last few years, instances in which trains have been derailed for various reasons. Now, it could be mechanics. Things coincidentally can happen. They can go wrong, right? I'm not discounting that. Can we have ones and twos that can be coincidences? Sure. Mechanical failures? Sure. It happens every day. But just like the COVID sudden deaths with vaccines, which CBS came out today and said they don't know if it was the vaccines or not. Anyway, more than 2, more than 20, more than 100 instances in which train cars are derailing and some of them have dangerous chemicals in them. I don't call that a coincidence. So we've got a huge problem in East Palestine, Ohio. You got fish dying, wildlife dying. You got people getting very sick. Meanwhile, the railroad company doesn't show up to the meeting that they're supposed to have and confront them. They're like, nah, you're going to get violent. You're going to get mad. Well, they have every right to be mad. People are dying. They're getting sick. The towns are destroyed. There needs to be answers and there needs to be accountability. But just as I was preparing for this part of the segment, for this derailment, and nobody has answers to it, FEMA's not stepping in because it's above their realm of help. They need more help out there in Ohio. Detroit, just outside Detroit, another train car derailment. One of the cars also has hazardous chemicals. Now, again, these could be mechanical. They could be coincidences. Pete Buttigieg comes out this week and says that it's not his fault. They're constrained by the law. Congress made a law deregulating some of the things with the EPA and train rails, and it was because of a brake law they had that they were unable to stop the train and it derailed. Again, time and time again, they deflect and lie and blame somebody else. Everything is Trump's fault. It comes down to, I didn't do this, Trump did it. Well, he never had a hand in it. Would the brakes that they had, or something to do with the brakes, would have caused this from being derailed? I don't know. But what I do know that there needs to be answers, and we're not getting any. So the railroad company needs to speak up and be held accountable, and Pete Buttigieg needs to be impeached. Because time and time again, when there's a crisis, he's unable to handle it, and he's nowhere to be found, and he jokes and he laughs about said crisis. I don't understand. Moving on to more national security concerns. The last few days, we have scrambled jets up to Alaska to stave off Russian jets. Apparently, Russia is getting more bold and flying around Alaska, so we have scrambled jets the last 2 days. It's happening again. This tension between Russia and the United States over Ukraine and Russia and China, ganging up and becoming an axis of evil, who else was going to be involved? Iran? We've got a problem with China. And if you've seen Glenn Beck's special the other night on China, China is at war with us. It may not just be a physical war right now, but we are a cold war with China. And we're not fighting it, but they are. They're able to send some 14th century tech balloon over here across the continent over our secret military sites all the way to the Atlantic Ocean before our president reacts. We knew the dang thing was coming from China to begin with. We knew it. And we let it careen all the way to the Atlantic Ocean before we decided to get it. And we did. We shot it out of the sky and we hit the payload also. So there's that. But the bigger question and concern is why? Why is China not being taken more seriously? We threw sanction after sanction after sanction and cut off financial ties to Russia on everything on a global scale. But why are we kowtowing to Russia or to China? Is it because of his business ties to China? China owns everything we do. And the more we realize that, the more we take them more seriously and cut them off, the better off we'll be. We need to jump on them and attack. Not physical war, but we need to cut sanctions on them just like we do with Russia. We're going hardcore after Russia. China's going to invade Taiwan and also nuke us off the face of the earth because they're not screwing around. We're effing around, and we're about to find out at level 10. That gradient line's about to meet, and I don't want to know what it's like when we meet. It is insane to fathom this weak, dementia-ridden man is in charge of our military, and we are going to hit the dust very soon if we don't wake up and solve these problems. You're listening to the Ryan Mac Show. We've got a loaded show today, so stick around. Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Welcome back to the Ryan Mac Show on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Text in 309-451-9299 is the text line. We've been talking a lot today about a lot of different things. Normally, I've got shows wrapped around one or two subjects or one theme, overlapping theme. I'm trying something different today. I wanted to bounce around a little bit. It's kind of I don't know if there was much theme to it. And the news, probably the theme was full of news, full of things to talk about. So I know I only have an hour, about an hour or so on the shows. So I try to keep it to either one topic that has a chock full of information. And I just thought I'd try something new today since there was not really anything particular, one full 45-minute, topic of hand that I thought I wanted to get into. So I decided to kind of roll with a lot of things that took place this week and the last week because I'm not on daily. I'm not obviously daily. So once a week, it is really kind of hard to find and come up with a singular topic when there's a lot going on. So what I try to do is create an overlapping theme and roll with that as far as some of the things I come up with. I'm interested in your thoughts. We've had a lot to talk about today. If you liked the way I did it today versus coming up with one overall topic each week, I can obviously still do both. But if you like the layout today where we kind of get to bounce around and talk more about different things going on in the course of the week, let me know. Text in. Feel free to give me some feedback. I would appreciate it. So to kind of recap today, we talked about a lot. Like I got to catch my breath now to the things that I slammed in for an hour. We hit up on the Super Bowl. I liked the game. I liked the outcome. I'm a Packer fan. I didn't really have any dog in the fight. But it was a good game. I like to see competitive games. We talked about the Super Bowl performance. I'm not a fan of Rihanna. I'm not a fan of a lot of the shows recently. I thought actually last year for an R&B and hip hop show, Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg killed it. I mean, I actually thoroughly appreciated that one. It was kind of nostalgic for me. This one was kind of weird. So I dove into that earlier. It had a weird vibe, Star Wars-y, kind of Satan-y, kind of weird Oompa Loompa vibe, and she was pregnant, so that was kind of took another stage. But I dove into a culture war. Are we facing that with some of the things we got going on with critical race theory and the DEI stuff that we're undertaking, the over-sexualization of kids and the drag queen shows that is taking place in public and some of the churches in the local area. That shouldn't be okay. I hit on the spiritual war. We're being attacked. Satan is working extra hard. I don't know if you're seeing it like I am, but he's everywhere, and he's prancing around, and he's loving the fact that all these things are happening, and we're just ignoring it and letting it happen because that's what we do. We sit back and take it sometimes. But there's a call to action. We have to be more vigilant and not forceful, but more bold and standing up and saying, no, this isn't going to happen. And it can't. A society will eat itself if we don't get back to some of the things that make us one of the greatest countries in the world. Our traditions, our norms, our American way of life are being threatened every day. And this whole idea that we want to be one party rule and one communist China rule of this Marxist, socialist, communist kind of blend of ideas, because none of them have worked. Actually, they've worked far more than they have. They've killed hundreds of millions of people over the course of the decades here that they have been worked. So there's no form of these in which they've worked to create abundance of freedoms and successes. They've successfully implemented their plans in which they've killed hundreds of millions of people in an effort to control populations. And all of those have failed throughout history. So we're seeing that here. America will never be a socialist, communist, Marxist country. No matter how loud, how forceful, how weird and twisted you can be, we will never become China. And we must stay true to that. Otherwise, America ceases to be America. The rest of the world will collapse. It really is come down to that truth. When America leads with American first policies, the rest of the world benefits. You're seeing the collapse of some of these other governments, some of these other societies, and some of these other countries because America has taken a step back. When we lead, and not just this globalist, collectivist idea that the elites have, when we are leading and taking care of our priorities and thrusting our freedoms and protecting ourselves, we lead much more efficiently, and we're going to see that. I really do believe I'm long on American values. I think that we are seeing an uprising. I think we are seeing an awakening, and we will get there. It's just going to keep chipping away at some of the things that they are trying to erode. I've also talked about a lot of news things that happened with, the physical of Biden this week, the health of John Fetterman. There's a lot of things going on, health-wise, mentally fit-wise, that both of them are not ready to do the jobs, but here they are. We live in a society that it's okay to accept the fact that you can check a box. If you're disabled, if you have a stroke, if you are mentally just gone, you are fit for the job. If you check a box and you're gay, straight, black, Asian, whatever, it doesn't matter if you're qualified for the job or not. You're hired. We have to stop checking boxes just for the sake of checking boxes. We have to start checking boxes that mean you're qualified for the job. That's really what it comes down to. These DEI hires and these diversity hires need to stop. We need to start not discriminating, but being more forceful with our qualifications. You meet qualifications, you have higher standards. We have to keep those standards. You raise the standards, you raise the level of competition, and you have a better society as a result. We got into Nikki Haley's run for office. We got into J.B. Pritzker's attempt to make everything free and at the expense of taxpayers in Illinois. That's going to be a disaster. So living here has been so worth it. So we've gone into the Michigan State shooting incident and how that every time that there's a shooting, the left wants to take away our guns. And every time it turns out to be not either an assault weapon or a illegal weapon at all. It's sometimes legally obtained. So there has to be laws that fit the criminal less and less, and it helps the law-abiding citizens more, not the other way around. We can't be coddling criminals, so that has to stop. We talked a lot more about Trump's involvement with his lawsuits in Georgia. We talked about the balloons falling all over the place. We've talked a lot about that. So join me next week. Ryan Mack Show on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. See ya.